Hello, everyone. We're so excited. We are coming back to you with Life on Purpose Live. We have got a great story for you today. If it were going to be a movie, it couldn't be any better. Maybe it will be one day. We have
Working on that, actually.
That is fantastic. We have Joshua Broome. He is a father. He's a husband. He's a pastor. He's a new father. He's got a 3-week-old baby, in addition to 2 toddlers. So we're thankful that he's taken time to come away. He's going to tell us his pastor story, but he's got a radical transformation story in the Lord. And sometimes it's great to know that you can come from pain and a terrible place, and God takes you in just as you are and turns you into just what he wants. And that is the story we have today, from porn star to pastor. What a catchy line, but it's true in your case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So long story, somewhat short. I decided to forego my time in college. I spent two and a half years in college. I grew up in South Carolina, and I was studying theater. And I thought, if I put myself in closer proximity to the agencies and the type of work that I wanted to do in Hollywood, then I would have a better chance of doing that full time. So that's what I did. I moved to Hollywood, and I had some success. I got an agent pretty much right out of the bat, and I started working. Not a ton. I did a few like really bad movies, like not even a B movie, like a C movie. But
got to start somewhere, right?
Right. And I was having a lot of success in modeling, but what I really wanted to do was acting. And in addition to that, just to make ends meet, just like pretty much everyone that lives in Hollywood, you had to get another job to make ends meet. And I started working at a steakhouse / bar type of deal. And that is where I met a group of girls, and they said, "Hey, have you ever considered acting?" And I grew up in South Carolina, and I thought, it's all about who you know.
Yeah.
And these people, they either are working on a project or they know a director they're going to introduce me to. And they said, are you an actor? I was like, yeah, actually I've been acting for a while and this and that. And they're like, no, we're talking about porn. And I was like,
yikes.
Yeah, because to be honest and transparent, I had seen that, but I had never thought about doing it. And to be completely honest, like, it was almost something that wasn't real. Like, almost like if my son saw Superman, or when we went to Disney World and he saw Mickey, it was overwhelming because is Mickey Mouse is on, his sippy and his coloring books. It's not an actual living, breathing person. So like when I saw these people who I'd only saw like on a screen or a magazine saying, "Hey, do you want to do this work?" I didn't really know what to say, but just to appease them and just to kind of say what they wanted me, to say what they wanted to hear. I was like, yeah, sure. And I agreed to meet with their agent. And when they said agent, like, just coming from the world that I was in, like, modeling and acting, it's like an agent. And it's not what I thought, because I just didn't see that industry functioning in that capacity.
Right.
And I went to Studio City and met with this agent, and I thought, again, I thought it was gonna be very shady, very strange. And I walk into this giant, business, and there's a private elevator and there's these nice cars. And I walk down this hallway, and there's this guy sitting at this desk, and he's got, he's sitting behind this giant desk, and he's got this big, like, double Windsor tie and, 3-piece suit, and sits there and asks me a few questions. And for me, who very much wanted to be successful, honestly, probably for all the wrong reasons, spoke to all my insecurities. He's like, you can be famous, you can make all this money, you can do all this stuff. And for someone who absolutely knew better, I said, sure, I'll do it. And I never thought that saying yes to that one film would turn into nearly a 6-year career where I did 1,000 films, and I traveled the world and was nominated for Best Male Performer of the Year 3 times, and I won it once. But that time in the industry, the more popular I got and the more money I made, I saw like all these goals that I had, you know, being famous, making over $1 million. I saw these things one by one that I believed would make me feel enough, that would
Yeah.
fill this void that I had inside myself, that like I would feel loved, I would feel accepted, I would feel valuable, I
Yeah.
would
You got all
feel
these
happy.
fans and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I thought that like that would be the thing that would make me, you know, feel like, okay, that's enough. And
Hmm.
once I obtained it, that's when I was at my lowest. So in 2012, I won Performer of the Year. And then the moment that I've been waiting for since I've been in the industry, they called my name to come up on stage and take the award. I'm nowhere to be found. And where I am is I'm at home on my face, crying out to the God that I didn't really know, wanting to
Mm,
die because
yeah.
I saw everything that I thought would make me happy just kind of, you know, kind of crumble. You know,
That
it,
was the opposite of. I mean,
yeah,
you were the more success, I guess, the more you felt as though, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Well, let me ask you this. This is not a so is this a porn an adult film industry awards? I mean, it's not specific. I mean, it's for
yeah,
that industry, right?
right, right. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's one a year in Vegas, and you know it's a big deal, and it's at the
Yeah.
Bellagio in that genre, and ultimately, like if you win that award as a guy, then you know you can charge more. Like companies want to work with you. You get, you know, like partnership deals and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
yes, I won the award, but I wasn't there. And what had happened is I stayed in that industry. I was never one who was on drugs or partied or anything like that. But what I found is the more success I had and the more I exposed myself to that industry, I isolated myself more and more from any authentic relationship that I had. It was very
Mm,
much like Genesis 2. You know, Genesis 2, Adam and Eve, they're walking, they're naked, there's no shame. Genesis 3, sin enters the picture and
wow.
find them hiding with fig leaves because they're ashamed because they feel guilty. And I felt
Hmm.
guilty, so I was ashamed to be a son because I didn't see myself valuable in that capacity. I didn't see myself
Yeah.
valuable as a brother, so I stopped answering my family's calls. I deleted, you know, my friends from my social media. I stopped talking to literally everyone that I knew in a real authentic way. And I found myself going for almost a year without anyone calling me by my name.
Wow.
Because in that industry they call you by a stage name.
Hmm.
And then a year goes by, and you know that had happened at the award show, and that wasn't enough for me to leave the industry. But and it was because I just saw myself as, well, I had become that behavior. Like I
Hmm.
was a product, and my only value was selling myself in that capacity. I didn't want to live because I didn't see a future beyond that, and I didn't see any, you know, there was no woman that would ever want to marry me. There's no way I'd
Right.
ever be a father. There's no way I'd ever, you know, be able to contribute in any capacity in a business. Like what kind of leadership, what kind of skills, what kind of talents do I possibly have? All I'm good for is selling myself. And I told myself that lie so many times, it
Yeah.
became my reality. And
Wow.
I walk into a bank and I'm cashing a check, or I'm depositing a check. And then after the end of the transaction, I pivot to walk away. And the teller says, Joshua, can I help you?
I
Is there
read
anything?
that story. I thought
And
that was
it just,
so cool.
yeah, it because it was just a little bit odd because it was as I was leaving, and it was almost like as she spoke my name, it shattered this reality that I had created. And it
Mm,
was like, because I'd only was going by that other name because I didn't have anyone in my life calling me by Joshua. And it just like really, it was just in this moment, like I felt like true like guilt. I felt like, wow, like this is like there's something that I'm doing is wrong. And I went
yeah.
home and I looked myself in the mirror and I had no clue who I was looking at.
Well, so that's the shame, the weight of shame and the enemy at work. But what was your family and your friends feeling like? I mean, as a parent, I would be thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'll take you however I can get you." But
Yeah.
I mean, you had shut down even the people that would have loved you through that because you couldn't love yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that, like, my mom, like, the only reason she didn't continue, like, she continued calling me, but I just stopped answering the phone. But she,
Yeah,
like, never did my mom condemn what I was doing in a capacity. Like, she never said, like, I'm terrible. She's
right.
like, you, Joshua, you are so much better than this.
Mhm.
I raised you better than this.
Mhm.
You are worth so much more than this. Why are you doing this? But never, like, get out of here, you're terrible, I never want to
Right.
talk to you again. I never spoke to my mom ever in my life, and her not tell me she loved me multiple times.
Right. Yeah.
um
And
so
that's important. That's really important
yeah.
because while you might not be in communication with them, deep down in your heart, you knew somebody was there for you if you chose to pick up the phone and call them and cry out for a
Yeah.
word of encouragement.
And I mean, and ultimately that's what I did. Like, I knew my mom never turned her back on me. So
Mhm.
when I was ready to, tuck my tail between my legs and run home, she wasn't there to point her finger at me and say, I told you so. She was
Right.
waiting for open arms because she didn't care what I'd done. She just wanted her son.
Mhm. That's really good. That's a good word for parents because, you never ever want to give up on your kid even though they walk far from the Lord, they walk far from the
Yeah.
home, but so, it used to be that the pornography industry was, hidden magazines coming
Right.
in the mail. And now, I mean, I mean, you can't give your kid a phone and hope they're not going to see
Yeah.
something they shouldn't see. So, how big has this become and how much is this affecting our culture today? I mean, firsthand.
Yeah. I mean, just our culture is just so over sexualized. It's like you can't watch anything on Netflix or,
Yeah,
YouTube, or,
yeah.
to be honest, like, I can't even allow my kids to watch Coco Melon without having some type of buffer or some type of boundary or some type of, like, preventative, like, software on their device, because a commercial will pop up for, Lord knows what. So
Mhm.
I think that, um sex sells.
It
and
does.
and I think, like, that was probably 10 years ago, and, like,
Mhm.
now it's gotten to a point where it's like, not that nothing matters, but, whatever you want to do is okay. I don't want to tell you anything is going to go against, like, something's going to hurt your feelings. Your feelings are important. And it's like you have, like, people creating their own autonomies. It's like,
Mhm.
this is how I want to live my life, and I want you to agree with how I'm living my life, and you should be okay with it, and you should acknowledge that it's okay.
Mhm.
um and it's a really, like, sad time, like, to not sad time, but just, it's a really difficult time to be in this conversation where, um the people that you want to reach, they're just so far lost, and society is just painting this completely opposite picture of what is true.
Mhm.
And what I found is you have two sides of the spectrum. You have, um, a growing um, a growing group of people who are young, who are zealous for God, but they have a legalistic approach, because what happens when we're prideful, it's often when the things that we struggle with, we are quick to point our fingers at. So it's like, because sex is so taboo, and we don't really talk about it as a church, it becomes something that, well, I don't know anything about it. I just know it's bad. And if I see someone doing something that doesn't align with God's word, I'm just going to point their finger at it. I'm going to, like, tell you shouldn't be doing that. And then you have
Right.
this other group of people where it's like, if I want to live my life like this, I'm just going to choose to, and you need to be okay with it. And
Mhm.
that's ultimately society. So it's so normalized. It's impossible to hide from it. and that's just like our nature. So it's like, as all human beings, Romans 3:23 tells us that we have all sinned to fall short of the glory of God. So our neutral is sin. So you have to actively pursue righteousness. You have to actively pursue purity. And you don't do that by just sitting back and hanging out and just waiting on what to happen. You have to be on the offense, and even more so today than ever before.
And I think the interesting thing about the adult films, and I've got a friend of mine who's a pastor and he helps young men with this as well, is for some reason, if you watch a movie, you think, you buy into the story. But you said even in your acting that nothing was real. It was not an intimate act, though you made it look like it. How do you convince the people that it's not real? Because they think this is going to become their reality when in fact that's not a reality at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it's so important that I tell my story with as
Yes.
much transparency as possible, because I want people to know that, yes, I made over $1 million. Yes, I did, 1,000 scenes, and I won these awards, and I did all that stuff. And after I did it, what I had was nothing, was emptiness, shame, regret, and
pain. You had pain.
yeah.
I mean, the opposite of what you went thinking you were going to get. You had pain, but then God began to, how did God enter into that? You're on the floor, you want to die.
Right.
I mean, how did that begin to undo all that had been done?
Yeah, so I left the industry, and for me, I was trying to run from my problems. I didn't want to deal with it. So I thought, if I stopped performing in those movies, all my problems would just go away. But what I was left with was, all of a sudden, I removed the fame, I removed the money, and all I was left with was the shame and guilt. And that was probably the darkest time in my life. And I lived through that for 2 years. So even though I was working at a gym and doing good things, I hadn't dealt with that shame and guilt, and I was still carrying that. And I lied to a lot of people because I didn't want to, I didn't lie, but I didn't want to talk about why I was in LA. I didn't want to talk about why I was in California. And then I met someone, and this girl was, super sweet. And I asked her if we could go on a date, and she said no. And she said, well, we can go for a run. And we met to go for a run. And as I'm sitting there waiting on this girl to come out so we can go for this run, I just feel this overwhelming guilt. It's like, you need to tell her. You need to tell her about your past, because what happened is, so many times I had started a relationship with a person, or started working somewhere, or started doing something, and I didn't tell the truth. And that truth came to the surface, and then it hurt the person that I didn't tell the truth to. And so I was like, I'm pretty certain that she's going to tell me to take a hike, but I'm going to be honest. And I was like, hey, before we get too far on that run that turned into a walk, I was like, before we get too far, I just want to tell you about my past. And I told her everything. I told her about me kicking my brother in the shin when he was 12. I told her
the whole thing.
Yeah. And it was almost like I just just kind of peeled the Band-Aid off, and just it was just all coming out. And at the end of that, she looked at me, and she's a little bit of a processor. And she looked at me and was like, you know what? I didn't expect you to say that. But what I do know is the person that I see in front of me, that's not who you are. You're not a list of the worst things you've ever done. That doesn't make a person who they are. And the best things that you'll ever do, that doesn't make you who you are. She's like, do you know who God is? And I was like, yeah, I believe in God. I believe that he created everything and created me. Sure. She's like, well, do you have a relationship with him? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, for certain, because I grew up going to church, and I had heard those words, but it was just a real Colossians 4 moment. She walked in wisdom. Her words were seasoned with salt. She broke down these boundaries, and just the way that she interacted with me, all of a sudden, I was hearing what she was saying in a different way. And I was like, man, I don't know, but I want to know. It cultivated this healthy curiosity. So it's I want to know, but I don't think I know. I don't think I have this relationship. And we went to church the next week, and I heard this sermon, and it was about Mephibosheth and how he deserved death because he was in the lineage, prior to the new kingdom. And he historically, all the family that existed prior to this new kingdom coming into existence, they were slaughtered and killed. And Mephibosheth, who was already crippled, was just a beggar, and he was looking up at this guard, and he thought that he was going to kill him. But instead, he extended his hand and he offered him grace. And he just didn't offer him a seat at the table for a day. He offered him a seat at the table forever. And that is what Jesus offers us. Jesus sees us in the middle of our mess, and God in his grace, he loves us so much that he gives us the opportunity to know him through the person of Jesus Christ.
And that's
like, yeah. So in that moment, I hear that, and I see myself in this story, and I give my life to Christ. And what's amazing about that is that person that I had that conversation with is my wife. We've been married. Yeah,
I love it.
And yeah, we've been married for 5 years, and we just had our third child, and that was 7 years ago. And for 5 years, I've been in ministry, and yeah.
Well, did you struggle, or did you and she struggle with intimacy since you had pushed everybody? I mean, that had to push you away from, they say if physical intimacy gets in the way, then, it's harder to build that emotional intimacy. And I think that's a big problem with young people today is they think the physical comes first because it's become so accepted. And then that emotional heart stuff is a lot harder to foster later.
Yeah, I think like God really did something really neat in our relationship, because she grew up Catholic and she had a relationship with God, but she was growing in this like idea of relationship. And we decided collectively, as crazy as it was, as someone who had been in 1,000 pornographic films, we decided to be celibate, and we went to premarital classes, and we got to know each other, and we had difficult conversations. And I had mentors, in my life, like unpacking the stuff that I'd been suppressing. And this idea in 2 Timothy 3:16, that idea of reproofing, like I had to destroy the way that I saw myself, the way that I saw God, and the way that I saw how I should appropriate myself in this world. And I had to just rebuild this idea of who I was. And I built myself in the Word of God, and we built our relationship based on the Word of God. And because of that time we spent, because like we met Easter, and then we got engaged in October. It was pretty quick, and then we got married the next July. But like God had us on this like fast track of, I was in a situation where I was running a gym, and I had this spare time. So I walked into church literally a week after giving my life to Christ, and I was like, hey, my grandpa told me if I was going to do something, to do it well. And I feel like I need to build a boat. And what I mean by that is like God wants me to share my story. And if I'm going to do something, I want to be able to do it well. And there was a guy who had just moved from Dallas with his family to launch another campus of the church that I was attending. And he had some extra time. So what he didn't know, and what I didn't know, is that I was going to spend 10 to 15 hours a week with this man for the next 5 years. And he was going to teach me how to read the Bible. He's going to teach me how to teach other people how to read the Bible. He taught me Greek in a year. We lived in the first chapter of John in Greek. And then that was one of the reasons that I just decided to go back to school to Liberty University and study Christian ministry. And just having people pour into my life, but just like, it was just this process of just tearing down lies and replacing it with truth. But to answer your question about intimacy, what I found out very quickly is lust takes, love gives. It requires sacrifice. And what I found out very quickly is I had no clue and had never experienced love ever in my life. And when I started to experience love, when I saw the work and the effort and the sacrifice and the fruit of what love was, I was like, I don't know what this is, but I love it.
Yeah.
This is incredible. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew I'd never experienced that before. So like God just like really like held my hand like side by side as we grew together in our faith. And we
Mm-hmm.
were both just really passionate about growing individually and collectively for God. And we just knew like from like very quickly, it's like, I don't know what God is going to do in our lives, but I know that it's going to be incredible and we want to do it together. But just
Mm-hmm.
like just having people pour in our lives, just like we can't do anything unless God is first in our life. You know, and
Yeah.
it's not always easy being a parent of small children. You know, it's just to prioritize, you know, your relationship with God and in our marriage and the
Yeah.
hierarchy of things going awry. But I think that's the beauty of being able to hear the Holy Spirit, where He will say, "Hey, this is going awry because I'm hanging back over here, and you're trying to run this show yourself," and just having the maturity of getting to the point where it's like you can identify that and
Mm-hmm.
kind of put things back in check. But Beth, just to be completely honest, it was a process of me experiencing things for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Because what
Yeah.
I found, I grew up, so my mom had me when she was 16, and I knew my dad, but he was just never like a father, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I needed to prove myself. And I,
Mm-hmm.
as a high achiever, I felt like the modeling and the scholastics and the athletics and the achievements and the awards and the money, like all those things, those were a momentary fix, almost like a drug addict. It was a
Yeah.
momentary fix where I felt like I was loved enough where I would
Yeah.
feel like I'm valuable, I'm okay. But what I found is peace is not found in things, it's found in
Mm-hmm.
a person, and that person's name is Jesus. And nothing even came close.
Well, and fake love for someone hungry for love is better than no love. I mean, because you can sell yourself on, I have all these followers. I mean, real love, it cannot be imitated, but you had substituted that for selling yourself on that all these people love me. But,
Yeah.
I'm curious as to, you're a pastor of a church now. How have the Christians accepted you and your story? Have you had a lot of condemnation? Have you had welcome arms? I mean, what's it been like?
It's been difficult at times. I mean, there's been people who are like, "Hey, I would love to have you share your testimony, but I would never give you my pulpit."
Yeah.
Or on the in the completely other spectrum, it's like, man, there's no way that I could be valuable in this capacity or this organization. I had the opportunity to be a pastor at Life Church, one of the biggest religious organizations in the United States. So it's
Yeah.
just like every time I would be like, man, like, there's no way that I could do that. God would always supersede my expectations. That's just who He is.
Mhm.
But to be completely honest, like, I have encountered both. I've encountered pushback from people that I never saw it coming. I've received condemnation from people where it's like you're great and all, but I would never want you like leading, you know, uh, this. Um,
Yeah.
and I just think it's just really hard for people to sometimes look past that for some reason. Like there's just something that is, I don't know. I guess just the way that sex is and the way that pornography is perceived. It's so hard for people to like to see me as a new creation. But for
Yeah.
me, it's like, okay, so either 2 Corinthians 5:17 is real and that person is dead, and I've been raised to life in Christ, and that person is just, it's not who I am.
Mhm.
And when God looks at me, He doesn't see what I did. He sees His Son whom He loves, that He loves
Yeah.
so much that He was willing to die for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I experience both spectrums. It's like I get incredible opportunities to do things, but weekly, if not weekly, monthly, people,
I don't know if I could take it quite that far and give
right.
you the whole, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that. I have a tough story too, and I wrote a book and I put it out there with some fear and trepidation because, I did some very not kind good things, but there's something about coming out of the dark and exposing it to the light. And in
Yeah.
Revelation 12, it says, you overcome our enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And
Yeah.
our testimony is our testimony. You can't debate what God has done in your life if
Right.
you see the fruit of what God has done. You are a new creation. Then we've got to be encouraging one another, because I truly believe the way to change the world is one story at a time.
Yep.
Everybody's story matters. Your story could change the life of so many young men, young women. It's not for young people even now. It's,
Right.
that whole industry and the perversion that has
Yeah.
gripped our nation it's affected everyone.
I mean,
So
that's what, yeah, I mean, that's what people don't see. People don't understand that you watch porn and you justify it, but then it causes you to see sex and see people in a
women.
in a construct that
Mhm.
you're not meant to see them in. So all of a sudden you start blurring boundaries. So all of a
Yeah.
sudden, as a married man who's watching porn that says it's no big deal, all of a sudden you have an interaction with someone at work that's where, like, that that's not right, but because you did this, all of a sudden your boundaries are blurred, and all of a sudden you've had an affair, and it's all because of the way that you saw sex.
Yeah.
I mean, and,
I,
and that's just true. Like
yeah.
the fact that people, send videos and photographs and things like that. The reason that you justify it is because of porn. If porn
Yeah.
did not exist, the probability of that happening would be pretty slim. But
That's very well said. Yeah.
because you saw it, you'll justify it because, well, such and such did. I mean, that's my children. My children, Cannon will karate chop my, the our littlest one. You're like, well, he did it.
Yeah, exactly.
I seen it over
Exactly.
there, so I should be able to do it.
So let me ask you what you're doing. So, and we know that there's a high percentage of pastors that have, gotten tangled up in this too. And I'm glad to know that you're there helping them because you are a pastor. And let's end on this question because your purpose,
Yeah.
your pain became your purpose. You are
Yeah.
now living what God has called you to do. And not a lot of people are ever really sure of that. But what are you doing to combat the porn industry? I mean, what can we all do to say no to this continuing to grip our nation?
Yeah. I mean, uh, a few things. So you need to be honest with yourself. So you need to know that porn is destructive, not only to you, but the people that you care about.
Yeah.
And then you are a sum of your inputs, right? So whatever is in you will flow out of you. So
Yeah.
I need to take inventory of what I allow in my life. What am I
Hmm.
watching? What am I consuming? We do that for food. We need to do it for content.
Yeah.
What am I watching on YouTube? What am I watching on TV? What kind of movies am I watching? Like,
Hmm.
what am I allowing in my life? Because boundaries are not something that God created to be mean. God cares about us. So he created boundaries to prevent us from experiencing pain. Like you said, I tell my son not to touch the stove because I love him and I know better than he does.
Right.
So we need to be truthful. We need to uh, take an inventory of what we're allowing into our life. We need to create boundaries, and we need people in our lives where we can have honest, open, transparent conversations and say, hey, I need checks and balances in my life. I need to say, hey, you said that you wanted to do this. You're not doing that. What's going on? And there's
Hmm.
just this idea of needing radical transparency. So I specifically, like, I am flying to San Diego next month, and another pastor and I were creating video curriculum. What is porn? What is repentance, and how it's different than saying I'm sorry? What does taking inventory of your life look like? What does healthy boundaries look like? And how do I continue to walk in the freedom that Jesus died for me to have? So John
Hmm.
19:30, it is finished. So if it is finished, it should no longer have any power over me. So I'm creating that. And also I'm launching a podcast pretty soon It's called counterfeit culture. So just like what you're talking about. So how many things in our life are actually counterfeits in contrast to what is true, and love being one of those big things.
That's going to be very, very good. And how can people keep up with you? I know you're on TikTok. I know you're on Instagram. You're pastor of a church.
Yeah, so we plan on opening the doors of a physical location in Iowa, like around the Iowa City area, in Easter of next year. But Known Church is an entity. So right now I travel and preach. I'm preaching at a church in Cedar Rapids this coming Sunday, Good News Baptist Church. I'm going through a series in Colossians at a church in Greenville, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place, but what God has me doing in this season is I'm finishing a book, I'm starting a podcast, and I'm really looking at how can I take the story that God is writing, not me, but God is writing in and through my life, and how can I impact today? How can I impact the youth of today? So how can you find me? So Instagram is kind of like the vehicle that everything else travels through. So I am Joshua Broome on all TikTok, Instagram, all good stuff. And I'm working on developing Known Church's website and all that good stuff. But Counterfeit Culture should be launching this fall. I'm doing that through Christian Broadcast Network, and I'm really excited about that.
That is so exciting. And I'm so thankful that you're here, because we see the trafficking, we see all the things that are happening that all start with the watching and participating with pornography. So I'm glad to know you have taken the experience that you've had, and God is able to use that so that you can use what you've learned to come against it for all of us. Because
yeah, I mean, I think it's important because I have a foot or a seat in a room, which many people don't.
Yeah.
And I think I have a responsibility because God has delivered me from that. And like my life mission is to completely eradicate the production of pornography on a large scale. So so that is my life goal. So I know that like sexual immorality and sin will exist until the day that Christ returns. But if I can do any and everything to just eradicate that industry for what it is, and also the people in it. So like porn stars are not bad people. They're lost and broken, and they need Jesus just like.
And they're hurting and lost like you were. They, half of them, I'm sure, want to die at the end of the day like you did, and that's not a sense of purpose.
And the scariest place for someone to be is neutral, because like Satan celebrates vagueness and neutrality. Like if you can say, well, I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
John 14:6 is clear. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. But if I can believe that I'm good enough to get to wherever, like that's where Satan wants you to be. So many of those people that are in that industry, they believe the lie that, well, this is just what I've done to my life, and I might as well pretend like I enjoy it, because what else could I do?
Right.
0% of the people lay their head on the pillow at night and are proud of what they're doing. And that's just true. Regardless of how many commas you have in your bank account, regardless of how many awards you have, whatever house you sleep in, whatever car you drive, when you sell yourself, when you are a prostitute, no one is laying their head on their pillow feeling good about themselves. And that's just true.
Yeah. And that's very well said, because a lot of people, want to live a life on purpose. They want their life to have value. They want to feel like they're making a difference. And, you've shown that you can pull out of something and move into something else because God calls you to it. It wasn't easy, but you did it. And you're living proof that you can have a radical change. Your pain can become your purpose, and God can fill you with freedom. And that's a great thing. So, well, we'll have to come back and talk again. This has been really, really good. Thank you.
Long-winded. I told you.
That's really good, though. I mean, it's a powerful story, and it's such a problem in our world. And I just think that you having that experience and talking from that perspective is, opens our eyes to the work that we all have to do, and we can champion you in the work that you're doing. So keep going and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much.
And congratulations on that new baby and beautiful
Thank you.
family. That's
Little
a good
baby
way for.
Judah.
Oh, it's so sweet. All right, Joshua, have a great day. It's good to
You
talk
too.
to
Thank
you,
you so
and
much.
we'll do this again. Bye
All
bye.
right.